Gosh, where did Chris go? When Chris comes back in, let's cheer that he's... This is the 8th sermon in the series for the neighborhood groups 1. This one is the chapter was called Ground Rules and Life Stories. The groups are to kind of plot where do we go from here in the 8th session, and so it's ground rules and life stories. This is also Pledge Sunday, so I've got a lot to accomplish in 15 minutes, and I'm sure I can do it. And I'm sure some of you will put a clock on this. I want to start with a story. Many of you know that I go to the Abbey of Gethsemane outside Bardstown, Kentucky, for at least once a week, 1 week a year, for spiritual renewal and revitalization. This year I went for 2 weeks. I wanted to wrestle through with some personal issues and some professional issues. When would be a good time to retire? Did I have anything more to give to ministry? What could I do to revive my spirit, and so on. The monastery has what they call hours, 7 hours of prayer time that I attend pretty faithfully. They start at 3:15 in the morning with vigils and end at 7:30 in the evening with Compline. And I tend to go to all of them. And most of them, I try to get there a little bit early, maybe 15 to 20 minutes ahead of time, so that I can sit in silence in the sanctuary and read Scripture and pray, and basically also just daydream. Sometimes my prayers end up being just daydreams. The sanctuary there, the chapel, is just beautiful. It's white brick that's very high. It's a very tall sanctuary, and it's painted, the brick is painted white. It's very clean and crisp and pure. The woodwork is very simple, and in the daytime, the light just floods in. So it's a light space. It's an airy space. It's a very uplifting space. It's just beautiful. One day one afternoon I was sitting there trying to think about what was the vision for the rest of my life? What would be the vision for the church? And I was praying, and I opened the psalm. What I tend to do is open the psalm book and just read whatever it opens to, and read the psalms before and after whatever it opens to. And I came upon Psalm 27, and I was struck by Psalm 27, where the psalmist says, "One thing I ask of the Lord, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all my days, to behold the beauty of the Lord, and to inquire in the Lord's temple." Well, that's 2 things, but I'm not going to quibble on that. I was struck by to behold the beauty of the Lord, and I thought, that's it. That's it. That's my vision. Beauty. That's the calling for my life. Beauty. To recognize and to create beauty. And I just got really energized by it. Beauty is a word that we don't often associate with church unless we're looking at stained glass windows. We think of other words religiously, and actually it's kind of hard to find religious essays on beauty, sermons on beauty. It just isn't something we think about. When we think of religious words, we think of things like sanctification and justification and salvation and forgiveness and faithfulness and so on. But beauty is a strange word, I find, to affiliate with church. What do we mean by beauty? Well, I want to start with what we don't mean, what I don't mean. I am not talking about the beauty that you see in the magazines in the checkout line at Kroger. I see that as kind of not beauty but lust. I see it as superficiality. I see it as commercialization, as shallowness. frankly, I think the cashiers at Kroger are more beautiful as people than what I see in the magazines at the checkout line. Oh gosh, this was in the late 70s. There was a movie out called 10. Do any of you remember that movie, 10? It was a comedy, but it was kind of to me, it was a bittersweet, poignant comedy about a middle-aged man who sees a young woman on her wedding day, and she's a 10 in his mind, and he spends basically the rest of the movie pursuing her because she's a 10. And it's comedy because he does a lot of stupid stuff, and it's kind of tragic too because he doesn't see the beauty that's around his life as he pursues this kind of vapid woman. Well, this movie gave rise to a lot of people talking about 10s. Who's a 10? And I remember one network did an hour special on who's a 10. And they featured a lot of beautiful women, and then a couple handsome men, just to show that sex objects can be equal. And then right at the end, they threw in Mother Teresa. And, here's this, 4'4" woman, with her bent back and in her nun's outfit. And, they talked about she was also beautiful, and they talked about her inner beauty. And then they went back to showing beautiful women. I don't remember any of the beautiful women that were in that show, and I don't remember any of the handsome men. But I do remember Mother Teresa. And just before that, Mother Teresa had given a speech in Washington, D.C. She had won some award. And in her speech, she talked about what was beautiful. And in fact, the speech has now been called Something Beautiful for God. And she talked about, arrogance and greed and selfishness not being beautiful. She talked about humility being beautiful. And then she talked about the ministry that she had with the poor and the dying. And she said, we cannot do what we do without your help. And you cannot do what you do without our help. We need each other to create something beautiful for God. And I thought, that's the beauty we're talking about. Of course, there's beauty in nature. But the beauty she's talking about in creating something beautiful for God are beautiful words and beautiful actions and beautiful gestures. Kind of a simplicity of living. And, when we think about beautiful words and beautiful gestures, there are lots of those things. The psalmist talks about how beautiful are the feet of those who bring good news to Zion. Feet are not usually beautiful. We usually don't want people to see our feet, but feet are beautiful when they bring good news, when they perform good actions. Feet are beautiful when they go to see a shut-in or whatever. Speaking of feet, when I started out in a ministry, there was a district lay leader who was a very imposing figure, and he always struck me as gruff, kind of a controlling type of guy, Harold Hussey. And after about 10 years in the ministry, I was appointed to the church where Harold Hussey was a lay member. And I really wasn't excited about going there because I thought, Harold's going to bully me. And Harold's going to push me around, and we're going to be at odds with each other. One day I went to visit a shut-in in the church, and she was in there in her wheelchair, and I walked into the door, and there was Harold Hussey on his knees, massaging her feet and washing them. I thought, what a beautiful scene. And I saw Harold in a totally different light. What a beautiful gesture he was doing in washing Margaret's feet. And you could see it brought pleasure to her life. I was at that church long enough that Harold developed an eye disease and eventually went blind. And watching his blindness progress and how he handled it was beautiful. It was beautiful. Beauty is all around us when we start to think of beautiful words and beautiful gestures. It's getting to be winter, and Elizabeth Greenwood, who's about 90 years old in our church, just knitted a blanket for Donald so he would be warm this winter, and she just gave it to him. That's beautiful. That's just beautiful. If you could see some of the prayer cards that our children in the church turn in, they're just beautiful, what the kids are concerned about and what they bring to God. Beauty encompasses almost everything that we value in life. Beauty is about meaning, it's about purpose, it's about patience, it's about humility. Beauty is about truth and direction. It's about peace and calmness. Beauty lifts us up. It fills us. It energizes us. Beauty gives us a reason to keep going. Beauty is attractive, and it connects us to other people. When we experience a beautiful gesture, a beautiful scene, beautiful words, we want to tell others. We can't keep it to ourselves. Beauty makes us want to keep living and want to keep trying. Now, the opposite of beauty is ugliness. Ugliness does about the opposite, doesn't it? It diminishes us. It makes us cynical. It makes us hopeless. It makes us want to quit trying. It divides us. It frightens us. It isolates us. I think of ugliness. I think of mean girls and mean guys. I think of bullies that diminish and isolate and frighten people. It's hard to think of the political campaign this year without thinking of ugliness. That's what we hear. It's ugliness, and we feel diminished, and we feel cynical, and we wonder why we keep trying. And then it's deplorable, and it's nasty, and it takes away our energy. Ugliness is contrasted to beauty. The psalmist is surrounded by ugliness. People are saying ugly words about the psalmist. He talks about being devoured by his enemies. It's ugly. But he turns to God for beauty. So there's ugliness and there's beauty. Beauty takes work. It might look so simple as a finished product, but it takes work. Mark has spent hours on this video. When the Blenders do a beautiful piece of music, they have been in rehearsal. They come on Wednesday night. They come early to morning blend to practice, to create beauty. When there's a beautiful meal, that isn't just whipped off. It's planned. There's sacrifice. There's discipline. When there is ugliness in the world, we need to live by beauty. You know, ugliness makes us blind to beauty. We kind of wallow in it. But when we're aware of beauty, we do become aware of ugliness because there's a contrast. And ugliness calls out the best in us to create beauty. I was watching Morning Joe a couple weeks ago, and I forget what candidate they were griping about. It's probably both. And Morning Joe said, here we are talking about this stupid stuff when we should be talking about serious stuff like the economy and immigration and foreign policy. That's what we should be talking about. And I thought, Joe, nothing's stopping you from doing that. Nothing is stopping you. You want to talk about this. We can't complain about ugliness and continue to live at an ugly level. We have to start creating beauty. So, now to the small groups and Pledge Sunday. The small groups in week 8 are to create ground rules and tell life stories. I think among the ground rules should be to find beauty in the world and to make it more so, and to tell life stories of beauty in our lives. We talk about 3 things in the neighborhood groups to push one another forward. Well, we do that with beautiful stories to create beauty and make the world more so. That's what the point is. We lift one another up. That's beautiful words and beautiful actions. And we send one another out to spread beauty where there's ugliness. It's interesting in the Isaiah reading, the beautiful feet. It starts with one person. How beautiful are the feet of the sentinel. And then it spreads to the people along the walls of Jerusalem. They start spreading good news. And then it spreads to the whole city. That's the point. To start with our beautiful feet and spread it. What does this have to do with Pledge Sunday? We talk about the beauty of the church. And the beauty of the church isn't simple. It does take sacrifice. It does take discipline. It does take generosity. There is the beauty of inclusion here. There is the beauty of community. There is the beauty of acceptance. There's the beauty of music. There's the beauty of children's ministry. There's the beauty of outreach. There's the beauty of lunches. There's the beauty of support group. There's a lot of beauty here that we support when we are all in. And it's so important for us to be all in so that others can find the beauty in the world through us and can be energized and filled by our beauty and transformed. Colleen told to me a beautiful story of something that happened in our church this week, and I'd like for Colleen to tell that beautiful story now.
Well, we were having a busy day on Tuesday, and Amy came to the office to say there was someone who wanted to speak to a pastor. And so when I went out to speak to welcome the person into my office, I noticed he was a very thin young man who maybe looked kind of Somali and very dignified and quiet. And when he sat down at my table, he took a moment to get his thoughts and then said, "I'm hungry. I haven't eaten anything for 4 days, and I haven't had my medicine for 3 weeks, and I don't know where else to turn. And as I started talking to him a little bit more, I discovered he was a student at OSU and lives not far from the church, and he is on a scholarship, and textbooks were a lot more this year, and medical school applications were due, and the money wasn't stretching as far, and it was several weeks before the scholarship check came in. And also, I think he was from out of state and no family around. In fact, an immigrant, first generation American. And so I started, at first to do what I normally do and give the information about NEMAP, which is something that we all support. It's a very important resource for our community. And since then, I found out that OSU has some resources too. But, as he talked about being in his fourth year of school, and maybe not because of academics, but just because of energy, maybe not getting through, I thought, this is not the time just to do a referral. And so I said, well, let's just go get groceries. Let's go down to Giant Eagle and let's go get your medicine. And as we went and talked, I found out about his family and other brothers and sisters in school, and mom and dad with too much on their plate to worry them. And his desire to be a physician and someday serve Doctors Without Borders. And as we walked out to my car, we walked through the sanctuary, and he said, I've never been in a church before. Never been in a church before. And I thought, how wonderful that someone who's never been in a church before, who doesn't have community, really, and who is really exhausted, knows that a church is a place where love is the brand and that they can go for help. That is such a blessing. It's such a blessing that people know that about churches. And it's because, not of what ministers do, it's because of what Christians all over do all the time, regularly. And I dropped him off at his apartment with his food and medicine and gave him my email so he could check back in if he needed things again. And assured him that I felt good about the investment in him because of his character and his caring and dedication. And I just want you to know you were all there. That's the Pastor's Discretionary Fund. You were all there and part of that.
So Colleen received this email from him Tuesday evening. Good evening, Colleen. Thank you so much for the lengths you went to today. My pursuit to help those in medical need was aided tremendously by your generosity. Most of my friends growing up were Christian, so I'm familiar with some of the stories told in the Bible. I view your help in the same light as the story of the Good Samaritan. I hope to emulate all the noble traits you exhibited by paying it forward to those in need. May we be all in supporting King Avenue this year.